Hello and welcome to today's show. It's been a little bit chaotic backstage here. All of a sudden, YouTube just doesn't want to cooperate. I have no idea what happens, and I swear, hand on my heart, it was not me this time. I really swear it wasn't me. Spoiler, it's probably me, but I don't know how or why that would have happened. Anyway, I hope you guys are sitting down because we've got some really cool stuff coming up in today's show, so it might have been worth that little bit of a delay. If you know of anyone who only watches on YouTube and they're a friend of yours, just send them a message saying, no, come over to the dark side, come and join Twitch just for today's broadcast. Otherwise, it will be uploaded as soon as this broadcast finished to the YouTube channel so that you can catch the VOD later on if you can't keep up with the entire show today. So there is that. But let me tell you, you are going to want to be here for today's show. There's lots of very important things coming up. Now, we've got an amazing show lined up. As usual, we've got lots of sneak peeks, a first preview of something that's coming up. You are only going to see it here. You are seeing it first. So I think that's very exciting. And yes, once you've seen this, I think you'll agree that the delay for Alpha was worth it. Anyway, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that. If you have a question for us, please type the word question into question in front of your question in great big bold letters that I can see it. I'm very old and frail and my eyesight's not what it used to be, and I've got to move my head to look all the way over there. So please do that, and please ask questions. Go ahead. We've got Till with us as usual, so let's make the most of it. Ask him questions like the square root of pi and all those kinds of wonderful things. Anyway, let's get him into the show before I carry on talking. Till, how you doing?
Hi everyone, don't ask me about the square root of pi. Please don't do that. Hello everyone, nice to be here. Yeah, wow. Another month went by and I'm sorry. I've spent the whole day trying to finish the latest build, trying to get all the tiny details in that I wanted to show today. So Andy and the team were very busy to finish all of that. And I'm like, and now we have this issue with YouTube. So my mind is still all over the place. Apologies.
That's okay. So, Till, we're going to be showing some stuff today, as we have in the past, but this is very much more advanced, and there's some very interesting stuff going on. There was also quite a big change in direction as well in terms of textures and the map, but we're gonna unpack that in a little bit too. So we're gonna do some fun stuff today. I hope it's going to require some of your interaction. So if I ask for stuff, please just throw it in there. There's no such thing as a stupid suggestion, only a stupid person. So bear that in mind. Now, of course, that was a joke, by the way. I mean, that's just me being mean. Okay, all right. So let's jump into it. Till, you've got something amazing to show us. I'm going to shut up. You can show us, and I'm ready to switch whenever you are. Just give me the countdown.
Okay, well, before we do the countdown, let's do a little wrap up of what has happened in the past month, because there are many things that we have been working on, and I think I need to explain a little bit what we have been doing, because if you remember correctly, starting last month, we had the onboarding of Nikita and Ilya, who joined the team as developers, and they are a real blessing because Andy has been working alone on the alpha build so far. Well, he had the assistance from Jan, but in terms of when Jan left, it was a bit of a gamble and it was a bit of excitement whether or not Nikita and Ilya will be fast, learning the code base, adapting to all the things that need to be done. And I'm really happy to say that both of them were a really great addition to the team, because now we have three, with Nikita, Jonas, Ilya, and Andy. Technically, we have four people who are coding on the application. And when you bring new people on board, there's always the questions: how long will the onboarding phase take? How much slowdown do we have because of the onboarding? And I'm really happy to say that it was a rather short onboarding time, and they are already in the full thing. So the things I'm showing today are everything we did with the textures came from Ilya, Everything we did with the other stuff came from Nikita, and Andy had a lot of time to just hop from situation to situation, help and assist where his assistance was needed, and then work with Holden on the back end. I hope we're not seeing that part today because we now have a crash reporter, which means that if the application crashes, a crash report will be generated, and you will have the opportunity to send that crash report to us with all the detailed information that we need to understand why the application crashed. I hope we're not going to see it today, but it is something very vital for us, especially once the alpha launches, to really learn where have we missed things, or where is your system out of the range of expectations that we had, and where do we need to adjust because of the core system we've built is different to the graphic cards you're using, the CPU you're using. So all of that will help us a lot. And I'm really happy that we have the crash reporter now. And then the rest of the team has been working on other parts that we, if we have time today, are going to show as well. You had a question, Guy.
I was actually going to say, if we actually see the crash reporter, it is a success. It means that it's working, at least in terms of reporting a crash. So, I mean, hey, it's important that all aspects of the program work, right? So it's not a flaw, it's not a bug, it's a design feature, right?
Yeah. Still,
yes.
we just have an hour, and I would like to use that hour to show you the cool new things that we did, and not the crash reporter working.
Absolutely. Let's. Anything else? I did have another question actually, before we get into that. You spoke about the onboarding being very quick. What do you think contributed to that? Because onboarding, I mean, the guys were stepping not necessarily from the space that you guys are into that space. Why do you think it was so quick?
Well, I think first of all because Andy did a very good handover. So he took a lot of time, explained everything. Second, I must just admit, because Nikita and Ilya are both very capable programmers, and the code base was, I mean, there are still questions out there, and they're still asking stuff. Where can I find this? How does that work? But generally speaking, they all connect very good to the way that Andy's thinking, and they were fast thinkers when it came to understanding the code base. So they're just good programmers, and that is something that shows when they need to learn code that someone else has written, and they're contributing to that. So we had a lot of discussion about parts of the code. We've rewritten parts of the code because of the feedback, but still they were able to understand the need of what needs to be rewritten right now and what needs to be rewritten after Alpha 1, where we kind of have a little bit of a pressure release because something is out. And we can then go in and say, okay, this was Alpha 1 material. Now let's make this proper clean code, and let's clean up a little bit here. I think Bodhi is really happy because the sprint meetings is whenever he's tracking the story points and checks how many people contributed how many story points. And I think he's the happy accountant. He's like, oh, you have a lot of story points. I'm proud of you. So yeah.
I kind of feel like, is there XP awarded when you get to a certain milestone of story points? Or do you get a magical item? Is it a bonus?
Yeah, you
get
might
this
have
check, and it's got money on it. It's
a wonderful cup saying I survived.
Inverted, but yes.
Inverted, yes.
There we go. Okay. Is that all we needed to talk about beforehand?
I think yes. I think it's necessary to, because while I'm going to switch, I'm going to talk a little bit about the many things that have changed, and it's really complicated even for me to remember all of the things that have changed, because I've seen so many iterations now. But let's unpack that while we go there. So I'm getting ready to switch screen? You're doing the countdown?
Absolutely. So let's switch on 3, 2, 1.
How did that work? Oh, looking good.
Not bad. Not bad.
Not bad. Okay. So another major thing that happened was that about 10 days ago, we have sent out the first review build to you guys, which means to Keora, to Guy, to World Anvil. So the partners who were helping us with the project in the first place, with the Kickstarter project. And especially for Keora, it was important to have his feedback on how the tools work. And we've taken his feedback and started to work it into the new prototype. And since there's so many changes that you're going to see, I wanted to give you a screenshot of what the old version was looking like. And that's what you're seeing behind me here right now. So we had a fixed texture. We said, okay, let's work with a texture, and we've played around with that, and we were trying to do something like, let's make it a 4096 by 4096 texture, because we have such a huge map when it comes to Earth size. The lesson learned, however, was regardless of what we did with the texture, when you're zooming out too much, it gets a very repeatable pattern. Like the pattern, it just looks terrible. So you're already seeing that here, that the pattern repeats and repeats. And the more I zoom out, the more it became visible to us. The same goes for the landmass texture, where it worked a little bit better, but still it was a problem that when you have giant landmasses and you zoom out, the texture repeat was becoming an issue. So that is something that you're going to see that has changed. The other thing is that we're using an algorithm to create this organic land coastline. And we just, with the feedback of Keora and with everything we did, realized whatever we do, the way we approach it, that's not a coastline. That is something like a coastline, but I think when it comes to map making, very rightfully, people will be picky about, does that look like a coastline or not? And we want to be as good as possible. We want to get as close as possible. So we said, okay, we take this feedback and we're going to rework the algorithm, and we're going to do a lot more adjustments there. So this is how it was looking before. And when we're going into the tool, you will realize this is how it is looking now. And the most important part is, I think this is very obvious, is you seeing here that we have, again, I would switch, compared to the old coastline, we have a way more organic, rounded, natural looking coastline than before. And we also have, I think, a very interesting water and landmass texture here that is dynamically generated. So that is not an image that we're loading and repeating, but all of that is based on noise shaders that we did to create those textures, which gives us a lot more options for adjustments and cool features that I'm going to show you the second we switch into the tool. Let me just quickly think, what else did we do?
It looks to me, Till, as if the outline of the coast is also a little bit stronger. Is that just maybe the scene that you grabbed?
No, that's just the scene that I grabbed. So in the current build, for example, you're going to see in a minute, in the current build, we don't have the shallow water actually in there, because that is being reworked as we have agreed on the final texture. We're now going to take that and work that into the shallow water again. And just for demonstration purposes, I took all of that, put it into Photoshop and recreated it there. But it is quite similar to that. the important thing though is that, and that is a lesson that we have learned, is we're not working on a one stage, one zoom level tool. We're working on a many stages, millions of zoom levels tool. And we need to go in, go out, look at all the zoom levels, make sure that it always looks okay-ish to good compared to where you're looking at it, because the texture needs to adjust when you zoom out and it needs to adjust when you zoom in. But it shouldn't be on a level where you had a little spot here, and the second you zoom, the spot suddenly sits here. So you want to have a baked-in texture, but you want to add, this is already level of details programming. You want to add levels of details, or you want to reduce level of details while you zoom out. And that is something that is still in progress. That's where we're getting. But the main goal for us was to say, okay, we want to finish the landmass tool to an extent where Keora can start drawing with it and can give us feedback. And we are currently in the feedback phase where he gives us his final feedback and says, okay, if you do this, then I'm happy, then you can release it. And once we have all that feedback and that approval, we can put a big check mark under the landmass drawing.
Now, doing it procedurally in terms of your textures also means then that you can open up the board to, oh, I just want a black and white map, or I want the oceans to be solid black and the continents to be solid white and all that sort of thing. So that makes it a lot easier from that perspective.
There is a beta tool out there that's called Shader Toy that allows you to write your own shaders, which means to create your own textures. And I had a brief discussion with Andy about the approach if we want to connect to Shader Toy and give users the opportunity to write their own textures and import that. And well, let's say he's not opposed to the idea, and he said it's not the biggest issue to do that. It's programming though. So we're not sure how many people will be happy with that. It gives us the opportunity to sit down and create predefined shaders for all the different texture variations that we want to do and make them available through DEIOS instead of using textures, seamless textures or repeatable textures or Wang textures or whatever you do, it gives you a lot more variety. But I would say, let's take the opportunity and look at it. So I'm going to create a new map here. Demo, I think, is a nice name for that one. And that was still a fragment from the previous thing I did. So here we're seeing the new texture. And as I'm zooming out, you will see, I hope the stream allows to see, that there are getting more like deep sea areas into the picture as I zoom out. So we are procedurally adding more of that detail while we're zooming out. And then we might be here would be a good threshold where we say, okay, we need to revisit that zoom threshold here because it's getting a little bit too, what would be the word? Yeah, noisy, probably. But then I go out and out. At some point, we will remove details because it doesn't make sense to have all those details in there, but we will fade more into a blue area with darker spots somewhere. If I go into the opposite direction so that you can see how this texture looks up close front, this would be the 5 kilometers, which something else you might notice will give you a little red warning. Because you are now beyond the threshold where props that you place are rendered without image quality loss. So the props we're getting from Keora, they are optimized for a size of 10 to 50 kilometers. That's the range where the props make sense. And that's the range that we have adjusted in terms of scaling, where we say, okay, this also aligns with the size of maps that you would be creating if you're not doing a world map. Like if you're doing a region map, again, looking at 50 kilometers here, that would be 100, 200, 300 kilometers. So that already is a map size of probably Golarian or Sword Coast. So this is where you're looking at, and this is where props are optimized for. If you're going too far in, they get blurry because you're going beyond the threshold of render sharpness. And if you're going out, they will just get smaller and smaller and smaller. We're going to see that in a minute.
Now, Till, there's a question that's coming from Eternal DEIOS, and I think it makes sense to ask the questions as we're going. I think so. Is the generated texture persistent across multiple loads of the same map? I mean, you might get a layout where you go, that looks pretty cool, I like the shading there, and it just hits the coastline right, and then you load it up again and it's regenerated and it's all
it's regenerated and different. So I haven't asked Andy, but the point is absolute valid. So the answer will be yes, it should be. I can't demonstrate because right now saving works, but loading doesn't. So I can save the map, but I cannot load it back in. So I will keep it in mind. I will have a discussion with Andy about it, but I think yes, the answer is yes. The texture should be baked into the map so that you're having always the same texture.
Okay, absolutely. Okay. All right, Tenwin, I'll get to your question in a little bit as soon as it's appropriate for what we're talking about. Okay, Till, please continue.
Okay, please ignore this little broken icon here. That's because the texture this is still just a placeholder that is going to be filled very soon and is just picking from the color right now. But here you will be able to select the landmass textures. And now you can already adjust the brush size. We have reworked the amount of tools that we're giving you to create landmasses. So right now, even the jitter option might be something that is hidden behind an advanced option expendable here. So all you need to do is you need to decide if you want to adjust the brush size, which I can also do by Control-Shift clicking. So similar to Dungeon Fog, Control-Shift clicking. I need to wiggle water with the mouse right now because it's only updating when the mouse position changes. But here you see with the scroll wheel, I can adjust that. Then I can start brushing away. We have two different modes. We have a no jitter mode and we have jitter mode. I'm currently in the jitter mode. So if I'm starting to draw a landmass, it will create something like that with the new dynamic texture generated for that and with a jitter applied. So that's how I would start off with creating my first landmass. I'm already in the add mode here, which means that if I start to add to this, and again, this is probably a little bit big, so let's go in here. If I'm adding to this, it always adds to the existing shape. So I can go in here and say, okay, let's make it like that. Let's make it like that. And I will show you something in a minute. The reason I closed that is because what we're doing right now is we're saying, if you are closing the shape, we will autofill it. If you're not closing the shape, like if I would do something like that, it would obviously not autofill. So if you want to make this a donut island, what you need to do is I can press the S for subtraction mode, or I will click here on subtract mode, and I will just go in here and subtract. And now I have a donut. Or I just go in here and delete it. There's one tiny spot left. So that is how you're working with that. Let's go back into the add mode and add something because I want to show you this right now. In selection mode, we're going to add more options here, but right now this is how by the way, this is how it looks without being selected. I'm so used to the selection that I keep forgetting deselecting it, but this is technically how it would look like. Now, if I go in, I can select the separate instances and I can move them around. So I can say, okay, this island should be here or this island should be here. And I assume by the end of next week, you will also be able to resize it. So you will be able to go in and say, make this a little bit smaller or bigger or rotate it. So all of those options will be worked in there. Now, those two landmasses, they are a group. So if I'm just selecting the group, I'm moving the full group. If I click again, I can select the single instances in the group and then just shift the instance, which also means that because this is one landmass, I can go in and join that. So I can combine them. If I want to split it again.
You've made a very angry looking clown in profile, but yes,
That's
sorry.
true. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So it's an artist's tool too. Yeah, sorry.
So there you go. If you want to subtract that, all you need to do is go into subtraction mode and cut it off. That will then again create two separate instances. Oh, that was my, I think I've broken it. Yeah, I can apparently shift that one, but it tells me it shifts the other one. Okay, so there you go. Still some bug fixing to do. Now it's looking even weirder as a clown. Okay. I cannot unsee this. I need to remove it.
It cannot be unseen.
Okay, there we go. So the other thing is, and that was a feedback from Keora that we paid a lot of attention to, is that he said, well, creating those landmass, we're calling that a jitter. So apologize if I just say jitter and you have no idea what I'm talking about. The coastline effect is a jitter effect. And he said, well, the jitter effect is fine if I'm not really sure how my landmass would look like. But if the second I have my landmass and I want to dish out the details, I need something that works without jitter. So I would like to be able to go in and refine that with my, I am in subtraction mode, that's great. So I want to go in there and refine that and probably say this is more like a beach without those coastal effects here. That might be a little less. Now, if I go into add mode, I would like to draw something like that here and add it. Maybe there should be a little island here, but that island shouldn't look like a true square. So I'm going to make something like that. Go back into subtraction mode and just very gently go in there and start to work on the shape that I would like to have. Right. I'm not going to, so you're also seeing that I have layers here, and I can, although this was one of the reasons why the software crashed today a lot on me, I will try to do it, but I apologize if it just goes goodbye. I can add a new layer, and I can create a new layer here. And now I can rename them. I can already do that. But again, renaming those things is very fragile at the moment. So I'm trying to avoid that right now. But I can rename those layers. I can sort them and I can even group them. And that was my headphone. And I assume that within the next week, Jonas and Andy have worked out why it is crashing on us. So we have an understanding of where the problem might be lying. It's because of the way that the name and the position in the map object are at the moment not well defined. But that's definitely going to be in Alpha 1 because we're very close to getting rid of that issue. Right, so that is the landmass tool as it is right now. In terms of, do we need to do anything on that? I would say we're at 90% finished. We might revisit our textures still a little bit and fine tune them until everyone is happy. So Keora hasn't had his final say on the textures yet because they just happened today. Keora hasn't had his final say on the way that we're drawing the land masses right now. There might be some additions to that. I also wanted to point out that something that isn't implemented yet although it's already looking really good, is we don't have the anti-aliasing in yet. The anti-aliasing is something that Nikita is taking on and might be finished by Thursday this week. And once we have that, we will hand it back to Keora and to you, Guy, and Dimi and Janet, so that you can play around and give your final approval. Hopefully it's approval. And then we're done with landmasses, because then it's just the selection and multi-selection tool to select all the landmass elements and shift them and move them, scale them, rotate them. And then it's going to be the props tool. And the props tool is already, I would say, at about 30 to 40%. And I can showcase a little bit of that today.
Before you get there, because I know you're super excited. I mean, we're all super excited. There's lots of questions that have come through that we should probably look at. But I'm going to take the power of being the person who's running this show. So my questions first. The layering idea of the continents, is that so that is that more of a grouping thing, really? So continent 1 is layer 1, continent 2 is layer 2, so then it's easier to manipulate the continents moving round.
Yes.
The layers, will they be able to sit over each other rather than squish into becoming a merged shape?
Yes, so that is one of the big differences between having let's say islands or land masses on one layer. If you're moving one, if they're sharing the same layer and they're touching, they're merging. If they are on separate layers, like this one is, and I'm moving it here, it is not merging. So there are some ideas of what we can do with that, or what we can do with that. Floating islands or continents would be something. B, elevation. So if we want to go that approach and say, okay, you could create that to create those elevation indications there. We're not sure if we want to go that direction. It was brought up as one of the ideas when we did one of the like brainstorming sessions. But yeah, the idea would be, and also apparently also the split of different continents. Like you could say this is Africa, this is Europe, this is America. So this would be another approach, and you have them separated into layers, and you can address them and adjust them. It also means that if you would be splitting this little island separate from that, every prop that I place here is a child to that layer. So if I start shifting that, I will shift all the props that are associated to this. Now, if I would be placing a prop on that, eventually the props should be associated to this child as well. But right now they would be associated to this layer, which means I could have something like a lighthouse sitting on that one, and I shift the landmass, I will have to shift the lighthouse separately. So those are some of the thought processes behind that.
Okay, that's super cool. Okay, let's get into some questions here very, very quickly. The first one was... Well, like I said, there are a lot of them. Right, so that one we've done already. How would you do a small region map in DEIOS? Like the map of a single province of, say, a kingdom the size of Austria? How big is Austria? How wide is Austria?
You're asking me things I can't answer.
600 kilometers across? More? 1,000?
No.
South Africa is only 1,500.
I honestly...
Okay, no, that's all right.
I should have prepared for such a question. I have no idea how wide Austria is. So Austria looks a little bit like a pipe. And probably 600 kilometers would be adequate to, but I don't know. So the answer to that is basically the same answer to this here. If we're now at 50 kilometers, right? So if that would be one part of the region, if we want to say we just want to decorate that part of the region, first of all, we have to ask ourselves if that region is not too small. But technically you would, if I go, let's go over here and start new. Let's say I want to have a region that is about, let's say 200 kilometers in width and 200 kilometers in height. And I don't care about the full world. I'm not interested in that. Answer number one is you will be able to create maps with the preset size that you would like to have. So you can go, you don't always have to work on world maps. You can go in and say, make me a map, a flat map that is just 200 by 200. And the canvas will only generate a map in that size. The reason we're doing world map right now is just, again, to stress test and see how everything performs. So
Lemuriel told us Austria's size: 753 north to south, and 290. 290 north to south, and 750 west to east.
Okay, so 700 would be. I think I need to scroll a little bit more here. So 700 would be, if I'm doing my best impression of Austria right now. 700 would be like something like this is the way that I would assume Austria looks like. Let me quickly count. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm already a little bit too big. So thankfully, Dungeon Fog or DEIOS will allow me to rescale it afterwards a little bit. Not right now. And then I have something that might be looking like this. Well, don't kill me. So probably it will be a little bit more like this, and subtract, I think it's a little thinner here. But that, oh, forget it. Okay. That terrible mutation is Austria as Till sees it. So if you would like to create that region, you would just go in there, define the region as you like it, start to add stuff to it. And on export, you can define the area that you would like to export. The thought process behind that was that you often have regions, even if you export them, you want to see the surrounding regions on that. So you want to have the full, let's call it continent. You want to have the full continent. But if I would export Austria, I would, because of the square format that usually export images have, or the rectangular format, I would see bits and pieces of Germany, bits and pieces of Italy, Hungary, and Swiss. I would see all of them to the sides. So the idea is that you just define the region, and on export, you decide what part of the overall existing map you want to export.
That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. I could also see an option where maybe there might be, in the far future, when you're defining countries, perhaps something like a cookie cutter tool where you could cut the country and then it would become its own layer. So you have your big landmass and you just sort of define, there's the country, and it becomes its own labor, or something like that. I mean, I don't know.
There is something like that already here, where you can, I think there is somewhere where you can cut and copy, where you can, I think this is sorting. It's probably not in the UI. I've seen it already, where you can split to new layer, where you can say, okay, make this a new layer. Also keep in mind that defining countries usually is something that comes through meta info, where you have political borders, where you define that. So right now we're creating the, let's call it the geographical land masses. The definition of where starts and where ends a country is done through the political layers, which will be available here as a separate layer to your complete layer list.
Cicero says, can you decide on your own areas where it's deeper or shallower in terms of the water? I'm assuming that's coastline, but also, I
Yes.
want a very deep section here.
So not in Alpha 1, because in Alpha 1 we are going to take the general outline of the landmass, and we are dynamically creating the shallow water areas. But because of the shallow water textures that we've just been discussing in the past days, we realized that we want to have something where you can brush, like it's going to be a brush tool where you can brush shallow water areas or deep sea areas onto your map.
That, I think, also answers Torkel 13's question, very similar to that. Damien the DM says, will the brush size scroll have a hotkey like the / from Photoshop so it can be remapped to a drawing tablet?
Yes. So Kiara already gave me a list of hotkeys that he would like to see. There is going to be a key mapping, which means that you can assign all the hotkeys to as you like. If you've noticed, you already have the prop description. I'm not sure if you can read it in stream, but it says, for example, it says select, and in the brackets it says Control+1. So if I hit Control+1, I am switching to select mode. If I hit Control+2, I'm going into the landmass. And then I also have the toggle between jitter and no jitter, pressing the Q. And I can switch between add and subtract, between A and S, which was mainly because I wanted all my keys close to WASD, because I'm a gamer.
Perfectly acceptable in my opinion.
Right.
Next question. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Tenwin says, will we be able to define if we want the advanced options to be collapsed or unfolded by default? Oh my goodness, that would be amazing.
So we are storing your last adjustment. So if you had them collapsed or decollapsed when you close the software, it will remain that way when you bring it up open. I think that is a better approach than giving you in the settings something that says open all advanced tabs. It's just you click through it, you like what you see, you leave it that way, and it will remain that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes the most sense. I think that's a good solution there. Damien the DM says, it looks like once the group, so on the same layer, once the two groups are merged, it doesn't maintain the original distinct shapes of the two items. It creates a new shape. Is that correct?
Oh,
unless it's a separate layer, it would.
Wait, let me test that. That might be something. That might be a bug right now because we've just reworked the way that the jitter is working. But I think I know where you're going, and it might be. You have a sharp eye, Jesus Christ. So let's look at that. Let's look at that little knob here. It should stay that knob. When I merge it, it does. I'm not sure if I got your question. If that was your question, the answer is no, it's not reshaping.
Okay, so that's good. From the jitter perspective, that's brilliant. I think what the question was, though, if you now can't pull that island that you've just merged in, you can't pull that out and have it go back to its original shape.
Well, I eventually will be able to control set it back out. But I will not be, like, once it's merged, it's merged. We had a discussion about whether or not we want to have subgroups, like every vector that you're drawing remains as a vector within a subgroup, so that you could go back in and pull them out. We were just because the way that Kiara is drawing. So the reason why I'm always working with Kiara here, because he as an artist is doing a lot of, like I say, draw for me, and I will watch you.
Let me watch you draw me like one of your French girls. I'm not sure if that's how it works.
I don't know why that got so creepy so fast. But because Keora is working with a pen, what he does is he's not drawing like me, where he would say add this, but he's doing this. Which means that every time he does that, he would create a little subshape, and you would just have all those little subshapes combined. And if you expand the list, the full list would be at your disposal. And we've said, okay, no, that's not really the approach we want to do. If you merge something accidentally because you just moved it too close and you were like, oh no, I love that coastline, Control Z and it will be undone. If you think like, oh no, I need to split that, and you go in and you split that, and you move that one a little bit away, and you're unhappy with that, unfortunately, you will have to rework it.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I think it gets to a point where it's like, well, there's so much undo that you might as well just start again. Would one be able to move land masses between layers for the purposes of merging, says Tenwian?
Yes. Yes. So that is one of the things why we said you want to copy or cut and paste. So you can cut something from one layer and paste it into the other layer.
It's fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, so last question, and then we're going to go on to props. We've still got a little bit of time. Damien the DM says, will we be able to essentially create our own default setup? Say we get a layout that we really like whilst working on a map for weeks, and then we want to start a new map. Is there a way to be able to, or is that something that we could look at including in the future?
So when you're talking about setup, do you mean UI setup?
I think that's what the question is. Yeah.
Well, I think giving you the option to you are now already bringing us into the same league as Photoshop, and Photoshop had 30 years of development until you got there. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it will not take us 30 years to have that available for you, but I'm not certain if it is launch material.
If we're still doing mapping it out in 30 years, all right, Till, if you're still there.
I assume by then we will just be like, we have those little brain.
Oh, we'll just be sitting there quietly.
You're thinking a map and it appears.
Yeah, and it'll be little virtual avatars of ourselves. I think that's going to be really cool. Okay, well, that's a whole different show. Right, so you were going to talk about props. You were going to talk about some props.
Yes. Okay, so it's not massively exciting right now because to bring props into the software, there are several components. We need to define the props and create a prop bundle that then needs to be imported, that then needs to be available through the prop selection tool, that then needs to be rendered onto the map, and that then needs to be stored in the map object. We've started on all of those elements. If you've been constantly watching the mapping it out stream, you've already seen our map manager, asset manager, where we can already define all those things. I've shown that to you. But now we're bringing all of that, or Nikita especially is bringing all of that together with Jonas, who's doing the UI. So right now I asked Nikita to show us the prop tool to give you a first understanding of how prop placement works. It's not going to be fantastically new magic. It's like you would expect props to work. But I think the important part is, again, to see how big are those maps and what is the relation between the asset and the prop. So for now, I have here, oh no, I can't deselect it, right? Because the second I do that, it vanishes. It's tied to the prop tool right now. So I have here a windmill. And this windmill is at the size that Keora gave us, which we then interpreted to be in a relation to how the map scaling works. So right now we're looking at 50 kilometers here. And if those would be 50 kilometers, then we already have a really big windmill there. But in terms of relation to all the other props, it makes sense that this windmill has this size in relation to this grid size. So when I zoom in, I'm now at 10 kilometers. I will shift a little bit so that we can see the scale. This is how big a windmill would be. And if I go further in, now it's getting distorted. That's why we have the warning here. So it's absolutely fine because we agreed with Keora that we allow one zoom step beyond the render threshold where assets get blurry. But it doesn't really make sense to go deeper in there because then all the assets will just be unsharp because of the way that the image needs to be drawn with too little pixel information per image. So right now, this would be the ideal size for the windmill. Or again, if we say, okay, now we can start to understand how are we using this tool, because now the props find their way in. We might need to adjust things still, because we are now understanding that this landmass, as we have drawn it, would allow us to place a windmill here. So this is going to be Holland, a windmill here, here, here. And we get a feeling that if we have a little forest here, and if we have a mountain here, and we are connecting those with roads, this might be an interesting, let's say, small island. But when I'm zooming out, at what extent would I not, as an artist, would I not be working with the props anymore? Because now they are so small that you might not want to add this level of detail on this level of zoom. But I could, and I could go even further out. At some point, you're not even seeing it on your mouse pointer anymore. So if it would go out like this, it's like there is a pixel that's still moving with the mouse pointer. I'm pretty sure you're not seeing it in stream anymore. I can see it. But I'm pretty sure no one ever would place a windmill at that zoom level. Which brings us to the question whether or not we want to limit the prop tool to a zoom level, where we say, okay, you're beyond the threshold. Now you can't place props. You need to go closer in, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense. This is something that we are currently investigating with Nikita. So this is prop placement. There apparently is a prop brush, so I can just click down and hold, and it will place those props. And as you are expecting, because that's how other tools are doing it as well, and because it's a clever way of doing it, is if you place a prop in front, it is in front, and I can also define that this one needs to be behind. So I could do windmill, 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 and then I want windmills behind that. So I could place one here and one here. Now I want them in front, in front. So we are auto-detecting whether or not this should be rendered in front or behind. Now, again, this is not big science. This is something that we have adopted from the way that it is done let's say in the market as it is right now. And we like the idea. We thought that this is a good approach. So we've added that as well. The thing that we are now working on is you need to be able to select the props, apparently, to scale them, although KR will hate you. And to, well, rotating props doesn't make sense at all. They're designed to be in that perspective. But at least scaling should be an option for you. And coming along with that, we are now looking at ways of how should props be grouped. Because if I'm placing a single prop, it probably should get on a separate prop layer as a child to that island. But if I'm brushing, most likely they should be grouped. This is a group that I have created. So if I select, I want to select that group instead of just selecting every single prop in there. You can then double click in there and select each prop separately, but pardon me. But that is where we are currently, well, trying to figure out what would be the most user-friendly experience.
That grey flashing, by the way, is Till's computer telling us that it's got a problem coming shortly. But yes,
oh,
okay.
Right.
So,
I'm not noticing that. Is that...
No, what happens is it's this thing that Zoom does is when it starts running out of graphics memory, it starts to flash grey,
Ooh,
and it's
okay,
usually when your machine is is running very, very high.
Okay.
Data and that sort of stuff. So don't stress too much about it. Just explaining where it's coming from. So there's a good question here from again Damien the DM. No, sorry, Tengwin first asks, would props representing cities and such then be excluded from the minimum zoom out, or would we then see new props for different zoom levels?
So one thing we've already had that more or less by accident. We've already had that in there. Is that if you place a prop, it didn't relate to the world coordinate system, which means that when you zoomed out, the prop was on the right position, but the scaling didn't adjust. So we already had that, and I said for today's demo, I don't want that to be in there, but there's going to be a checkbox where you can do that. You can say, okay, this city remains at this size, regardless of whether or not I zoom out or zoom in, which allows you to give you a world view of your map with at least the important cities, and you can define which of those should be on that or should be removed.
There we go. There we go. Damien the DM says, for the prop brush, will some elements of randomness be allowed, like placing within 10% of the pointer?
Yes.
And then would we be able to adjust things like the placement frequency? So
yes,
all that kind of.
So
usual...
yes to all of that. First of all, keep in mind that our prop brush might not be as heavily used as you might think, because the biome system will create exactly that. Like I could fake a forest here, and I could start to draw a forest. But that's for the prop brush. That's most likely not what you're going to do once you have the biome system in there. But I'm absolutely with you. I agree that you should have an offset, and you should have a range of how often do you draw that. And you will have the accordingly sliders for that. Yes.
Okay. Eternal DEIOS says, what about different props displayed at different zoom levels? Is that going to be possible?
You mean so depending on, I think what the question might be pointed at is that if I have, let's say I have a cluster of windmills here, because this is where the windmill dwarfs are living, and I zoom out, how about we collect all of them together and replace them by one bigger windmill, which is the level of detail I have been talking, I think, in the last mapping it out. So that is one of the approaches. And I think, so we're definitely going to investigate if that works. We will see, because I think there are some issues that we currently, it sounds simple, but I think once we're doing it, we might run into problems like offset positioning. Where do you find the center? How do you place that? So if the question goes into that direction, then yes, this is going to be something that we're looking at. Am I still there?
We can hear you, but your video has finally collapsed. Okay. Are you talking, Till?
So can you hear me?
We can hear you. We just can't see. Well, your video is just frozen.
Interestingly enough, my computer just gave up. I might be back in a second. I can I can hear you, but I have black screens all over the place.
Yes. We're now seeing a map from Dungeon Fog behind you, which is very exciting. I think that this is a very good point at which we should stop. We're on the hour anyway, even though we started a bit late. So rather than risk it, I don't know. Till, do you want to?
I'm back.
You're
Look
back.
at me.
You're
Here
back.
I am. Yeah.
With the beautiful Dungeon Fog symmetry.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, apologies. I had no idea everything went black right now. It
Yes.
might be because I remember that I heard a discussion between Nikita and Andy. It might be that we have a memory leak.
Yes.
And
It's your graphics card. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was draining my graphics card.
Yes.
So yes, sorry, where was I?
That's well, you'd kind of handled the whole idea of the prop resizing itself, and so the question was refined to, so for example, the windmills, you might have windmills and little houses around those windmills and a little farm, but when you zoom out, it changes from windmill and lots of little farmhouses to a new pop which represents a farmland. Is that something that you guys might be looking into?
Yes. Again, yes. This is the level of details thing that we are looking at. It's really early to give an answer to that, because I think once we have the prop placement and the biome system in a state where we feel like, okay, we've got the technical components in our hands, we understand them, and we can start to tweak. This is where the artistic part comes in. You say, okay, what cool stuff can we do with that?
Okay, I think that's a good. I think that's a good answer. T Cats is asking, can we add random scaling and rotation to props as we brush it, and slight variations to the prop itself?
So random scaling.
Yeah, big mountains, little mountains.
Yeah. Yes, that would make sense. Again, this will be part of the biome system anyhow. Random rotation, I don't think so that it makes sense on a world map. That might make sense on city maps and battle maps.
Okay, perfect. There we are. That brings us to the end of the questions. So we are technically now into overtime, but we did start a little bit later.
Yeah, let's.
Do you want to show everybody the sneak peek of what else has been happening aside from world
I
stuff?
think what everyone is asking at the moment is, okay, we've seen where you are at the moment in terms of alpha progress, and I think you all have seen that we are making we're getting ahead and ahead, so we're making progress here. But we are not yet in a state where it makes sense to announce a new alpha release date. I have to refer to when it's done when I'm being asked that. I do feel, though, that an announcement or something similar is at the horizon. So I would expect by the end of this month that we are in a state where we can talk about the release date. And internally, we are hoping that the release date might be even in this month. But again, with all the feedback that's coming in from the test, like from our partners, with all the bugs that we're running in when we try to finish something, this is highly unpredictable. What we are doing, however, is, because that is what Herbert and Thomas are working on, is we do want to, once the alpha has been released, we do want to have a general broad overview of something of a design that fits all bits and pieces. So we are currently in the process of reworking our website. Like, we're doing a rebranding and brush over of the website. And we've agreed that we are doing the following thing. 2 weeks before the alpha is going to be announced, we are going to release the new website. this gives us this gives you a little understanding of where are we at the moment. This gives us enough time to fix things that the new website might be having, and we're not running into fixing website stuff and alpha stuff at the same time. And this means that we are going to roll out the new website, roll out the alpha release date, and then go into alpha. And this gives you a good understanding of where we are at the moment, because when suddenly the website changes, this means it's only 14 days. And yeah, so let me just, because my screen crashed and I need to understand which.
All right, shall I cut away from you for a moment while you figure that out?
That would be very nice.
There we go. Okay, so whilst Till is busy sorting that out, I think it's safe to say, I mean, I absolutely loved the comment from Punch Clock Gamer saying, so, alpha release, the absolute confirmed date is soonish. So we are waiting for soonish. I can't wait for that. And Eternal DEIOS, I think also 10 out of 10 would prefer a more stable release than a sooner release. Absolutely, I would as well. I think, you know, when we get this alpha, I think there's going to be a very big dedication to really wanting to use it to start making our maps. And if it saves but then it doesn't load, I think there's going to be more frustration than exploration, and I think that's what it's all about. So Till's shaking his head. It looks as if yes. Okay, I'm answering questions that Till is talking to me. You can't hear what he's saying, I hope. But he's saying that with the new security features of Zoom, where people can't automatically share, you have to kind of give them rights to share and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, the joys of it. We've got another question here from Atlantis. If you get let me show you what Till's sharing, because now we're stuck in that. Atlantis, will come back to your question. So here we go. That's what Till is sharing. He's no longer in the picture, but he can still talk.
Can I talk? Do people hear me?
Yes, they do.
Okay, perfect. So this is a sneak peek of the upcoming website, and apparently this is the existing website.
Yes.
So what you're going to see is we're going to rework all of that to make it look and to make it fit our general new design approach that we're taking with our with Project DEIOS. So once we release the website, I hope I can make it happen. There you go. Interesting. There you go. I needed to refresh.
Wait. There's something more that we need to do, and that's on my side. Give me a second here before you start playing it, because it's going to look really weird. What are we on? We're on that one. No, we're not on that one. We're on that one. Sorry, that's my mistake. No, there's a green screen effect on the because we hadn't planned on doing a screen share. We'd planned on.
You're right.
So there we go. It's fine. You're clear. It's now looking beautiful. All right. So go back to that.
Okay. Switch. So there you go. This is going to be the new website. This is going to be the new Dungeon Fog website. So we have a little animated video that is going to first of all show the battle map editor. Later on, it will also include the map making tools here. So there's always going to be a little, what do you call it? King's header video stuff thingy. Then we will have those elements where you can learn of how it works. What can be done will be a feature gallery of the Hall of Fame maps and other maps that we have handpicked that we think are representing Dungeon Fog and the map editing part quite well. You're going to have your latest updates here. So there's going to be a news section, and then there's going to be more information about the tool. So this is going to be the landing page. This is where you're going to start. You're going to have your menu here where you, if you are logged in, get access to the dashboard, your map section, your campaign, public library, and all the other things that are in there. As well as if you're not logged in, this is going to be your main menu. And here are going to be your account information. So once you are inside, I will show you that probably, well, when it's finished, most likely. We have also reworked the dashboard. We are reworking the My Map section. We are reworking all of that to make the new design be in line with all the other designs, like the Project DEIOS website that is going to be included in here eventually, and the Project DEIOS user interface and the appeal of the software itself, and later down the road, the web version of Project DEIOS. And all of that should be one beautiful design that is fitting. So all components should fit there. And that's what Herbert and Thomas are currently working on. And again, once we are finished with that, we will release that first. And this is going to be our little bell whistle saying, oh, alpha is coming. So once the website is out, you will know when alpha is coming.
There you go. There you go. Shall we go back to seeing you, Till?
Sure.
Okay. And I just need to change to that. And we go there. And there you are, sitting next to me now again. Lovely.
Here I am.
Okay, so there was a few quick... I think the website looks absolutely beautiful. I really do. I think it looks really, really cool. I think it's nice and neatly laid out. It's in keeping with modern day trends. I think it's really, really, really cool. I see that Botosaurus is saying that if we do like it, it's his credit. If we don't like it, it's nothing to do with him whatsoever. So there we go. Absolutely.
No, he did a great job. I loved it a lot. And I was like, yeah, that's how it's going to be. And Thomas and Herbert both did a really good job implementing it, because there's always this little difference between how does the layout look and how does the reality look. But they were like on point with the design, and I'm really happy. I can't wait to roll out the new website.
There we go. Lovely. Atlantis, last question, I think, before we end the show today. Atlantis says, if you get done with Alpha 1 while between mapping it out shows, will you release it, or will you hold off until the next mapping it out? It's a very clever question, sort of fishing for a date. No offense if it is, I think it's very smart, but yes. Yeah, or would you release it before, and if so, where would we find it?
Mapping it out is a developer's diary. It's where we talk about the development progress, the successes we have, the drawbacks we have. If we are, once we have the date, we will release as soon as it makes sense. So again, the mistake I made during the Corona crisis was that I announced the release date before we were in a stable testing environment. I was like, easy peasy, we can do that. Corona is not going to affect us at all. And the result was that as the date drew closer, we realized that we are far behind what we were wanted to be. And the lesson I learned from that is we're going into a stable testing build for at least 14 days, which means that we from our side believe it is finished, and we are now giving it to everyone on the team, and we're just trying to break it and find the last bugs and glitches. And we take 14 days of daily map making and drawing and stuff doing with it until we are certain that it is finished. 14 days, because given that there are 7 people able to test it, means that we have enough valid data to understand if we shouldn't run into a critical issue because we're testing between each build. But there might be still things that we've been missing throughout the full development. So 14 days, I think, is a good window that gives us enough time to fix 1 or 2 critical things and about a handful of minor glitches and improvements. So the second we dish out the website, the second the website gets relaunched, you also know internally we have switched into testing mode. And that gives you 14 days until we either, because we've run into a terrible bug, announce the release date, or we just release it.
There we go. But you will shout it out from the rooftops that it's coming out, and
I'm pretty sure you will
yeah.
not be able to miss it. If you're on the newsletter, you will receive the newsletter. If you're on Discord, you will hear it on Discord. It will be on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and our partners most likely will talk about it as well.
Oh yes, absolutely. There's also a question about tutorials on the alphas and the betas. I know that there isn't anything planned because it's too early to really invest in those sort of things. I know for certain, though, that on my channels, I will be playing with the tool publicly and
Yes.
walking you through it. And
Keora also said that he would like to do a little stream with me where we're just doodling and drawing. And so there is going to be material where you can look at the creational process. Keep in mind, I promised Keora to emphasize that today. Alpha 1 is a technical alpha, which means that you have some of the tools you need to create a map, but you will not be able to create a beautifully fleshed out map with the first release version of Alpha 1. We will, starting from Alpha 1, we will continuously add more tools to it. But release date Alpha 1 means you can draw landmasses, you can modify landmasses, and you can place props, and you can modify props. Yeah. No rivers, no paths, no roads, no biomes, so no brushes. So there's still a lot of stuff to add there.
Absolutely. Till that brings us to the end of today's show. We had a long one today, but I think certainly worth it seeing all of that cool stuff going on. I can't wait. I really can't. So thanks for sharing with us, Till. I really do appreciate that. I think everyone watching appreciates that.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for the great questions, as always. From my side, I will now go back and test some more and give some more feedback. Yeah.
There you go. And thanks to both of you for being in the chat. I didn't see anybody else in there just providing some answers as and when we needed them. And there's the Discord link if you have not joined the Dungeon Fog Discord. I'm getting confused here. If you haven't joined the Dungeon Fog Discord, go and join them. There's lots of interaction happening there. It's really a very active Discord, I must admit. So there we go. Until the next mapping it out, or until a giant announcement, or until soonish, we'll be back next month. See you all then. Until then, happy map making.
Bye.